We're apparently up to the 11th Hellraiser now. Are you aware that there are 11 whole Hellraisers? Hell's Razor. I'm not sure what the appropriate plural is, but there are 3 of us here in this giant box because we're on Riverside. Before we talk about Hellraiser, real quickly, if you're loving this look we have these days where we're coming at you in 1080p, that is thanks to the beauty of Riverside, the video platform we're loving. You can do meetings with it, videos. You can just use it for podcast audio. I'm really glad I found it. There's a link to it below. You can learn all about Riverside and hopefully enjoy them like we do. Our good friend Bibbs is here, William Bibbiani, who, thank God, is a Hellraiser expert. He's going to describe this new film to you.
So if I solve it, do I get a prize?
I do.
Yeah, there's a brand new Hellraiser, and yes, there are 11 of these bad boys. This is the first one to get any kind of wide release, even though it's not theatrical, in over 25 years.
Wow.
They're based on a novella called The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, and they're all about a magical puzzle box that, when you open it, opens a gate to another dimension where sadomasochists from beyond the grave offer you the most intense of experiences. Pain and pleasure, indivisible, cranked up to 1,000,000. It's indistinguishable between heaven and hell. And in the new film, a struggling addict, played by Odessa A'zion, finds the puzzle box and unlocks it in a series of configurations that one by one drag people that she comes in contact with into this hell dimension. Will she find a way to solve the box and save her soul? We'll find out in Hellraiser from director David Bruckner.
Did you enjoy this as an expert? Is this a good one?
This is one of the better ones. I wouldn't say it's the best. The first 2 are the gold standard for the series. This one changes a few things about the mythology. It used to be you just open the box and then boom, Cenobites, and they drag you to hell. And my cat is currently breaking things all over the place. I don't know if anyone can hear that, but it's fun. But now there's like a whole series of puzzle-solving sequences, and it's good because it ups the body count on this movie a lot, so that there's a lot more people that can be killed, and we can see them be dramatically flayed and tortured by our beloved Cenobites over and over and over again. But the downside is that it makes the film a lot more plot-centric. It's more about just solving puzzles and uncovering mysteries than it is about what really Hellraiser is mostly about, which is about the pursuit of forbidden fruit, leading to the literal opening of a Pandora's box that destroys you and everyone you care about. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot I like in this new movie. I think David Bruckner films the heck out of it. It's really quite gorgeous. I think Jamie Clayton is a wonderful new addition as our new Pinhead. But yeah, it's a little formulaic for my taste for a Hellraiser movies. Then that brings it down just a smidge.
Some of the camera work is really cool. Like it reflects the puzzle box structure, right? Like there's an overhead shot of her on a playground, little merry-go-round thing. And while she's going to the left, the camera's going to the right. And I feel like over and over again, he'll do things like that. Like the car is on the road going to the big house in the Berkshires.
The archways in the house.
Yeah. While she's rounding a corner, the camera's coming back the other way. So there's like an interlocking kind of visual motif going on here that is very clever. I did not realize while I was watching it, perhaps you guys did, who Odessa A'zion is.
I found out later, yes. She's the daughter of
Pamela Adlon.
Pamela Adlon, yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And one of the roommates, Aoife Hinds, is Kieran Hinds' daughter.
Yes, this is definitely a Nepo movie, as the kids would say.
But she's really good in it because it's like she's got to have this arc where she's really, really damaged from the very beginning and struggling with her addiction, and she's got to find some sense of purpose, some sense of strength somewhere. This is kind of an obvious but relevant allegory rather, in terms of the use of addiction throughout, right?
Sure.
I think the box is representative of temptation and of a thing that she thinks she can control. And only once she comes into contact with the Cenobites does she realize that she has to surrender, as one does in surrendering to the fact that you're powerless over alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. So I found that to be, it's clearly not like just extraneous little detail about her that she's an addict.
That's definitely intentional. And that's a new wrinkle because previously the Cenobites and the temptations that they offered were a lot more sexual in nature. And if you look at the difference between the designs of the Cenobites, Pinhead, Chatterer, all the others, initially they were covered in leather gear. It was much more of a BDSM sex club aesthetic. And here we have abandoned all of that. And in fact, most of them are largely nude, except for the bits that are covered up by various mutilations. This is much more about a different kind of personal experience, a self-destructive personal experience than a sensual one. And that's an interesting approach. I think Bruckner could have done a slightly better job of getting us into the mindset of someone who is succumbing to addiction and is repeatedly doing things that are not in their best self-interest. I think the previous Hellraiser films did a much better job of guiding us into the character's sexual temptations than Bruckner does through the addiction temptation. But it's still an interesting approach.
Yeah, as somebody coming in cold, it worked for me. I didn't have the other things to compare it to. I thought the metaphor was cleanly done. I liked the idea that at each level of the puzzle box opening required a sacrifice. So you're right, it does certainly up the body count. It kind of weirdly made me think about 3,000 Years of Longing in terms of the narrative of when somebody offers you, this thing that you really want, your ultimate wish, that there's always a caveat. And that in both cases, you have these heroines who are like, no, I know this is not a good idea. How do can I outsmart you? Can I play a long game here? So I thought it was interesting in that respect. And yeah, I think that Odessa A'zion is so good here. Like it's, I think that people tend to forget that you can incorporate strong characterizations and really memorable performances in horror movies. People will often sort of think that the genre is all about stimuli. But if you look at this year alone, I mean, you've got Mia Goth in Pearl, you've got Odessa A'zion here, the cast of Barbarian. I think there's a lot of really great acting that is coming out of horror movies this year.
And this is not just jump scares.
No.
This is deeply creepy body horror, and they linger on it. They want you to see every gnarly piece of viscera.
If you think this is wild, you two have really got to see. Neither of these people have seen a Hellraiser movie. You guys have got to see the first two Hellraisers, because the first two Hellraisers, there's some visual effects in the first two Hellraisers, especially the first one, that are amongst the most inventively gruesome I've ever seen. And it's clear that David Bruckner realizes that he had to bring the franchise back to that, because the last 6 movies in the series were all straight to video, just cheap, tacked on. Most of them weren't even originally Hellraiser movies. They were an unrelated script that they then threw the Hellraiser characters into in order to basically keep the franchise alive.
I want to recommend to folks, if you've not read Bibbs's ranking list of all the Hellraiser movies over at The Wrap, please do. It'll take you on quite a ride. And you'll remember the name Kari Wurer, which I had not thought about for a while, and now I have the Rural Juror song stuck in my head. Also, Dave White reviewed this Hellraiser at The Wrap, so check that out as well.
But there's a moment here where something goes into someone where I'm like, no. No.
Yes, that does that. Yes, actually,
that's a feature, not a bug, Christy.
It is actually, because I think Clive Barker was always very, very good at understanding that the appeal of violence in his better stories and his better movies. He's also a very good director. He directed the first Hellraiser. He directed Nightbreed. I think he understands that our pleasure in watching horror and engaging with horror is distinctly tied into our revulsion. We are attracted to things that repel us and vice versa. And at its best, Hellraiser can do that. And I think there are times that this movie does that.
What's your number, Bibbs?
My number is, I'm going to give this a solid 8. This is a definite recommendation. It's not the upper echelon of the series, but it is definitely not the lower echelon of the series. And it's Hellraiser back to form, which I will happily take. So
Alonso,
more, please.
What are you saying?
I'm also going to say 8. I found it riveting and gorgeous and gross and in all the best ways. And yeah, it makes me want to go check out the earlier ones that Bibbs recommend. And it also makes me think that a new franchise along this line would not be the worst thing either.
I'm saying 7. I don't love it like you guys do, but it's got a lot of style and some really memorable imagery. So Hellraiser's out there on Hulu.